Welcome. Today is Wednesday, April 24th at 6 p.m. and this is a meeting of the Senior Center Site Selection and Building Committee. This meeting will be held in person at the location provided on this notice. Members of the public are welcome to attend this in-person meeting. Please note that while an option for remote attendance and/or participation via Zoom is being provided as a courtesy to the public, the meeting or hearing will not be suspended or terminated if technological problems interrupt the virtual broadcast, unless otherwise required by law. Members of the public with particular interest in a specific item on this agenda should make plans for in-person versus virtual attendance accordingly. This meeting will be live on Zoom. The public may access the proceedings by joining Zoom meeting ID 375-414-6055 or by calling 929-205-6099. For additional information about remote participation, please contact Carly Antonellis, Assistant Town Manager, at atm@ayer.ma.us or 978-772-8220, extension 100, prior to the meeting. So I will call us to order at 6:04 p.m. Welcome, everybody. And let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, and Ellen makes 5. That does give us a quorum. So I guess the first item is the approval of the agenda. Can I get is there anyone who would like to make changes to the agenda? No. Can I get an approval to accept the agenda, or a motion to accept the agenda?
I move that we accept the agenda as printed.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Chair says aye. All right, and then I guess we need, here comes Ken as well.
Yeah, we need Ellen.
Yeah, we need Ellen to say aye as well.
She's muted.
But she is muted. I believe she wasn't feeling well tonight, so maybe she's, oh, here she comes.
Aye.
Okay, thank you, Ellen.
I had to figure out how to unmute it.
Great. Okay, so that brings us to approval of the minutes. I believe everybody received the February 29th, March 25th, and April 4th meeting minutes. And April 4th is actually the meeting that got canceled. I wasn't sure if procedurally we even needed to approve anything from that. I just wanted to put it on there just in case. Did anybody have any questions about the February 29th minutes? We'll start with those.
Nope.
All right. Can I get a motion to approve?
I move that we approve the meeting minutes from the February 29th, 2024 meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. All right. And then the second set of minutes that were outstanding is March 25th. Thank you, Dennis, for doing those. Any questions or revisions to those?
Nope.
Okay, can I get a motion to approve them?
I'll make a motion to approve the March 25th minutes of the Senior Center Site Selection and Building Committee.
Great.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, great. Wonderful. All right, so Dan, do you want to offer an update on the RFP for privately owned land? Or I guess that came into Carly. I'm happy to do that too, since I'm going to make you talk about the other ones. So we did have an RFP issued. This is the second one we've actually done in this project. A request to private landowners that was advertised both on the town website, the town Facebook page, the Senior Center Facebook page, as well as through, Dan, what's the name of the
State
Central Register?
There we go. That's the word, yes.
Yeah.
The Central Register.
Yep.
Yep. For asking if any private landowners had land that met the criteria that we set forth by the committee. There were no responses to that. So that was due April 12th. That pretty much leaves us with the 3 town-owned sites that we have been focusing on in the interim. I suppose the committee could say we're definitely only looking at those, or I suppose you could say you wanted to reach out to someone specific. But I mean, I think my opinion, at least, is that people have had now 2 chances over the last 2 years to, you know, express interest in this project. But what do you guys think?
And I think we move forward with the 3 that we know, and, you know, just move forward, trying to make the best decision possible based on what we have. Yeah, I mean, the only caveat to that is if we get somebody later on who now jumps up and says, oh, what about this? And I guess we will address that if and when that should occur. But between now and then, I think we're just...
Yeah, I agree, and I think, you know, once we're gonna have the architect on board too, and we'll explain it later on, but he's already been kind of catching up to speed on some of the committee's work. But, you know, show him some of the sites that we kind of had as, what do we call them? It's like B, like in the
Right,
B,
yeah,
in the
yeah.
B category, you know, which, you know, it's a potentially good site, but you would need another site. So as we also show him the ones that we have on strictly town-owned land. So I think it'd be good to get his opinions too.
I was thinking, it's kind of disappointing, I guess, that but land is so rare and so difficult to get your hands on, you know, for anybody at this point in time. We didn't even get an inkling, I guess, or there was some interest, but nothing really materialized. And nobody was interested in filling out it just never came to a full application or anything like that, I guess, so.
Right.
Just, yeah, I mean, I think we've got a lot to do here on the land that we have, and I like that idea of maybe looking at the Bs as well, but
Give him a 10.
I think the 3As might be enough to certainly get us going. I feel that no matter what we do with the architect at this point in time, it's going to be beneficial, because we're going to learn so much from landing a building or figuring out your angles with the program and things like that. So, keep going.
Great.
Yeah, I agree. And just to echo Dennis's point, I think until we have utilized the resources of the architect, of course, we'll keep an open mind for due diligence. But I think once resources have been spent on the architect focused on these 3 properties, I think we kind of lock ourselves in and move forward.
Yeah. All right. That makes sense to me. All right. So let's see. Update on due diligence for town-owned sites. So the 2 main parts of that, I don't believe there was anything for Brook Street that was outstanding. We did inquire with the town manager's office. He was going to seek the opinion of town council regarding the Groton Harvard Road, the 115 Washington parcel on Groton Harvard Road. I did hear today that he heard back from town council, but just kind of immediately prior to this meeting, so he asked for a day or 2 to actually review that information himself before he sent it out. So I think that will be forthcoming shortly. And then the other item was getting a meeting with Mass Development for discussion of moving the gate on Bishop Road. And I believe that that meeting has been set up for April 30th, right? Yep. So that is moving along as well.
And who do they plan attending that meeting?
So I think Robert set that as a staff meeting. But I do think it's probably worth noting, are there particular things that we as the committee would want that subset, like what would we want to know as far as questions for that initial meeting that would help us choose a site, because that's really what we're doing, we're site selection.
Well, obviously we're down to 3 sites. It would be good to know whether or not we can gain Mass Development's cooperation in trying to access that site, and have a clear understanding of what it would take in order for us to move the process forward on that site. And, you know, obviously, you know, I don't know the answer to that yet. That is, if Mass Development says, would prefer not to move the gate, or it's impossible for us to move the gate, or we're prohibiting you from moving the gate, or any, any version of that. How do we as the building committee respond to that? Or do we go to town council and town manager and the select board and say, well, it's town-owned property, and they're prohibiting us from accessing it?
Yeah, I hear your first question is, this committee would want to know, is Mass Development interested in cooperating to move the gate in order to gain access to our frontage on Bishop/McPherson? All right. That's a fair question. All right.
I'd like to frame it a little bit differently. To me, the most important, Dan Van Skelcook was nice enough to do some research on the side, and he had mentioned to us before that he had contacted DPW at Devon's. Mm-hmm. And in the last few days, he got us a sample of some maps, some older maps that were around, and sent me a copy to look at as well. So it appears pretty obvious from the data that they sent us that Bishop Road ends where the gate is placed and McPherson Road starts there. So my first hope was that there was a map kicking around. In fact, it was a map by Devon's that said Bishop was named as right in front of the access to the town's land. But it doesn't appear that historically that's the case. It goes way back to that Army map looked like it pretty much answered the question.
Yeah.
So my approach to is similar to Dennis's approach, but somewhat different in that I don't think we need to ask them to move the gate. I think we can just try to work with them to install a second gate down beyond where McPherson Road curves in the triangle the road is, where they had actually put in a pollinator garden in the last 12 months. And so far as that gate is concerned, then we could either offer to pay for the installation, but the point is that the first gate most of the time is open except when there's flooding. So potentially by putting in a second gate, we could say, agree on some signage about the front of the road and where it intersects with Park Street that basically didn't say anything when everything is open, but in the event that the second gate was closed, it would basically either have a flashing sign or some kind of printed sign that folded, up with a message on it that just said, McPherson Road closed ahead due to flooding, something like that, or due to environmental issues, or whatever language they want to use. And then the first gate would only be closed in a very big emergency, if something happened at the airport or something happened on their land outside of the flooding. So in essence, the first gate would stay open like it does 99% of, maybe almost 100% of the time. And the second gate would be their control point. So that was what I had in mind. So
it's unclear to me what the objection to us having access to the land or the move, that is, it would seem to me that there are some clear advantages to mass development for the town to develop that parcel.
Right.
And it's fully in keeping with mass development's brief to, sustainably, increase access to Devon's and all that might entail, increase jobs in the area. So it would seem to me that it's in mass development's interest, broadly speaking,
right,
that the town spend the money necessary to, and again, that presumes that that's the site chosen, and there's no guarantee of that.
Right.
But
I don't think we can assume that there is or isn't an objection to it.
Yeah,
until we meet with them. Yeah.
I think we do go in well prepared. Let's put it that way, to have a logical discussion about the whole thing.
Yeah.
More so than that, I spoke to Dan. It's interesting. The whole thing is interesting, but it's great walking down when the gate is closed. I'll tell you, I did it twice in the last couple of weeks with Jonathan, and it's just a beautiful walk when you walk down there when there's no traffic.
Right.
So I was thinking in terms that even if we get their cooperation, this is a little bit beyond the committee, but it certainly would be a thought that there would be some kind of even simple gravel paths along the side of the road. There's plenty of width on the sides of the road, and it's kind of sandy and gravelly down through there. So the Oxbow, this is my trick question, of course, which I found out. when you look at all the drawings, the maps and whatever you want to look at, it turns out that the DPW land is a direct abutter to the Oxbow National Wildlife Refuge, which fascinated me. I always thought it was closer to the river. I didn't realize until I looked at the stuff that it's actually the DPW's border that is right next to Oxbow. So Oxbow, in essence, starts exactly at the end of the DPW gates, fencing. It goes right down. So we were able to walk in there, and we went down further along the river, and then we walked down your sewer easement, back to the gate, your DPW gate. There's a nice little path in there that they have to maintain. I mean, there's an opportunity to impress mass development with, let's get more people walking around your Oxbow land. It's not their land. I guess it's their land, but it's got an overlay of the National Wildlife District. It's not a district, it's a, what do you call it? Wildlife refuge is the correct term, I believe. But I don't think people realize that you're walking right into a national wildlife refuge when you walk right down that road. It's fascinating. So there's a few angles here.
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
To what extent would the Ayer representatives on the Devon's Enterprise Commission be able to weigh in on this? Because this project would also, that is, it's occurring on Ayer property, but I think from their perspective, the Devon's Enterprise Commission would see it as a positive for the, overall growth and the Devon's reuse plan, and it's fully in keeping with everything that they, big picture that they want to do at Devon's in terms of what Ken was saying. So I think our representatives, and I looked at I'm not sure who they are, frankly. But
Jimmy Pernod is one. Jim Pernod, which we all know. And Bobby Gardner. Was appointed by the governor. There's a couple of people from Shirley, of course. Yeah.
But if they have some sway with, or if they have some input with mass development to say, we feel like this is a win-win-win, I think that might be helpful.
Yeah. I think those all sound like wonderful approaches, and yeah, I agree with those.
Me too. I think I had kind of the same thoughts. I don't want to really repeat them, but go in there and show them exactly what we're trying to do and see how receptive they are, and understand what the process would be if we are doing that. We'd be putting some utilities likely in that roadway as well and things like that eventually. But just see, and I agreed with Ken. Have the open mind of, hey, maybe we don't get rid of that gate. We could do a second gate. Things like options like that too as well. Yeah.
It's an interesting resource. It's been sitting out there at the edge of town around that area, but you just don't think about it.
Yeah.
Because you just don't go down there.
Yeah.
I think when it was probably when we were, we used to have it as the brush dump, years ago, and when I moved in town, that's where you went like every weekend. You'd go down there and just kind of turn around and.
Yeah, I don't know how when the landfill was being capped, that turned into the transfer station for a while too.
Okay.
The brush dump did. I don't know how they dealt with any gate issues back then, but probably barricaded the road or something.
It's so rarely
it's just
closed.
Yes.
This week, I've checked down there, just given everything that's been happening with all the rain we've gotten. But it's been somewhat unusual, I think, that it's been closed for this long.
There is a time period in the spring they close it for some rare species too, salamanders or something along those lines. I forget, but it's a couple weeks or so, and Devon's DPW manages that.
Yeah, when we walked down there the other day, this is an interesting issue, but the gentleman was cleaning the road by the bridge with a water truck from DPW and Devon's. The water was down, the river was down low enough you could drive through.
Oh yeah, did they
were
get
actually cleaning the debris off the road, but they were also doing trees removal between the bridge and West Main Street. They were clearing out some trees and stuff. So there was equipment in there doing work, so that may have something to do with it. You could drive that right through there though. But be a nice $3 or $4 million job to put the type of retaining wall you would need to keep that river from flooding the street. It would be a big job, but it's doable.
Well, I think that part of that is raising the bridge. There's once upon a time they were talking about they needed to upgrade that bridge, that railroad bridge, to get it higher over the.
Yeah. Well, anyway, That's what we have for ideas. If you have any other ideas, we need to approach it. Think about it.
I mean, I don't think so. I mean, not for that meeting, but also to find out what for that particular site, to find out what are the criteria for railroad crossings there, if something's needed for that. Like with a different use, so if there's no buildings on that road, now there would be a building on that road. Although someone pointed out to me the other day that that same line crosses Fitchburg Road someplace else, and there's no lights or gates there either. So maybe it's a moot point, but it would be at least good to look into that. And then I think the only other due diligence that needs to go on with this site, at least at this moment, is I believe when we were looking at those initial drawings, that was it had both sets, the purple and the pink hash
environmental
marks. Yeah. So what is involved in those designations, and then how does that impact the?
They aren't showstoppers. They're more of just, I don't know what an analogy would be, kind of like a small hurdle. It's similar to, if you have a wetland and you have a Concom submittal, an application.
Okay.
So the ACEC, that would be triggered. It's actually not triggered for local municipalities unless you have a state permit or or state funding for a project. And it's triggered if you do half an acre or more disturbance. It used to be automatically triggered, but now they add that half acre. So anyways, if that were to be triggered, it triggers what's called MEPA, Massachusetts Environmental Policy Act, which is a regulation. And essentially that's just, all right, this project's going on in a place that's been designated environmentally sensitive. Let's make sure that the project isn't going to have a significant impact. So you have to submit an application. Here's the proposed project, here's the alternatives we looked at, and here's why we're doing it. Here's some mitigation that is going on to prevent any issues within the, the area. And then it basically goes into what's called the environmental monitor for a month. And any state agency, anyone in the public can see this project is within the AC and comment on it.
Okay.
And then after that, whoever administers MEPA, I think it's EOEEA, Environmental Energy and Environmental Affairs. They write a decision, and it basically says either you're okay, or it says you have to submit an environmental impact report based on this project. It could have a significant impact. So, what we're proposing here, I wouldn't see that triggering in the Ayer. I've actually never seen a project trigger one that I've worked on.
Okay.
And we've done a couple. The cross-country water mains we've done. Those both had MEPA. But anyhow. And then what was the other? Natural Heritage Endangered Species Program. So with DPW, we've had the permit for that as well too.
Because you have activity on the site.
Right. So for example, right now we're actually working with them in Spectacle Pond. We're looking at a new well source for a third well out off of. It's a kind of a satellite from where our Spectacle Pond treatment plant is on a parcel the town owns. And so we're basically you submit your permit application in accordance with the Mass Endangered Species Act regulations, and the Divisions of Fisheries and Wildlife administers that. And so they review your project, look at what you're going to do for mitigation, and then they make sure you're not going to have what's called a take. So it's a take of the species, that would significantly impact the species habitat or such. So they, basically it's a permitting process. They review it. They might give you some not restrictions, but requirements, conditions. That's the word I'm looking for.
Okay.
So I wouldn't see that either being something that would stop a project like this, but it would be something you would have to permit and work with through construction, and then possibly afterwards you would have to make sure you maintain like the wooded area or whatever and stuff like that. But
at what point, or would we bring the Conservation Commission in to either advocate on our behalf or interface with the state agencies, or are they not engaged with? That is, would that information, filling out of the forms, approval of, would that come from this committee, or would that come from the Conservation Commission?
Well, if we trigger the wetlands Permit Act, if we're working near wetlands, then we trigger a local Concom permit. With that permit, you could actually combine a natural heritage endangered species review. It's kind of a thing that allows you, it accelerates that permitting process with endangered species. So if we were to trigger that, we could ride that and take care of both at the same time through the same permit. But if we don't trigger any local Concom permit, we technically could work directly with the state agencies for those state permits, and that would be done through our architect and his sub-consultants.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
So it sounds like to me that in order to submit, at least for the MEPA review, you have to have a description of the project first. So it sounds like, I'm all a fan of doing things, concurrently, but it sounds like we couldn't move forward because we don't know what
You could,
what the impact would be yet.
We've done this on projects before. It's just reach out, beforehand without doing any submittal and just get a feel for, what the permitting agency thinks of this potential project. So like, say if we had something down on paper from Catlin,
right,
of where a potential senior center might go, say, hey, you could bring it to them and say, hey, this is what we're thinking here, do you see any issues with this, and see what they say.
Okay.
You can do that informally. Yeah.
All right.
We have a real life situation right now where this is happening at 91, right next to the transfer station is a building, used to be Burnham Trucking. And they came to us, the planning board last night, but the natural heritage line runs back through the back of that property. So even though it's an enormous slope that goes down to the conservation lane that they own, it's the perimeter of the natural heritage is right at the top of the slope. So they did exactly what Dan just said. They reached out orally, got an email back, and told us about it. And of course, that was insufficient for us. So we said, we need either a copy of the email or the no-take letter, which is typically what we see the planning board. And it's happened with almost every subdivision that's happening in town now.
Right.
Because this overlay from the Natural Heritage Endangered Species Act, I think that's the whole title, isn't it? Something like that?
Yeah, that's what it is.
Falls in almost every piece of land now that's left in the town of Ayer.
Yeah, we did it, for the recent highway garage we put in like 5 years ago at DPW, because you said the DPW parcel takes up most of this natural heritage. They kind of carve out where our buildings are, but that was a new building, and so they didn't have any issues with that.
So it usually, your comment was right, it usually just happens concurrent as you're working out the details.
Okay. All right. So it sounds too early to start that process right now. We first need a little bit more in terms of what the design and where a building could go, and then
Devon's
initiate
as well, working on that kind of concurrently, but that might be something more, pretty critical too. Maybe more critical, yeah.
All right. Any other updates on the due diligence items?
I'm sorry, I forgot what you said about, so Robert talked to town council. Robert's going to be reviewing town council's comments regarding the school deeded land, and we'll see where that stands.
Yes, I believe he just received it, like just prior to the meeting. So he just asked for a day or two to review it himself, and then he would distribute it and get it out. Not distribute it, he would have an update for the next meeting, I think.
You won't distribute it, is that what you're saying?
I think there's something like letters from town council are not for distribution. I don't.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah, either way, we'll figure it out. I think he just needed a moment to read it himself. All right, so I think that brings us to item number 5, which is an update on the contract with Catlin Architecture.
Yeah, so with this one, I reached out to Catlin, let them know they were selected, and they put together a contract and sent it to myself, and I gave it to Ken as well for us to review. And basically, they gave us, I think it was Longwoods. I don't know if it was Longwoods or he said it was Wilbraham's. It was the same contract, so we went through there, and he tried to insert kind of what we were doing for the first few tasks. So Ken and I went through and had several comments. And I've since gotten back with Catlin, and he was okay with the comments we had and the changes. And so I did a few more edits to it, and we attached the proposal and the pricing from the proposal. So it basically set up as a contract not to exceed that pricing in that proposal without future authorization, and they bill us on their rates. And so right now the contract hasn't been signed yet. Catlin's just doing a final look and getting it back to me. And then I was going to have town council do a final look before before the town were to sign it, which Robert can sign a consulting contract of this nature. So.
Without select board approval? I mean,
Correct.
on his
As a town manager, he has the authority to do that.
And do we have a, I mean, I don't have a clear, that is, what would the first 3 tasks we would want Catlin to perform for the committee? That is our, what would...
So I think the next step will be to, the contract, bring him in, have him sit down and talk to the committee about what we've been doing and where he kind of thinks we should head. But I think my thought would be the program's obviously important. We're not going to know how big, what to put, what building to put where without knowing the program, reviewing that, updating it, which is part of the first task we had in there. And then the next task would be to be putting together schematic plans and also kind of helping us build those concepts on the various sites that we look at. So that'll be kind of the ongoing task until we get the site.
So we want, the initial ask is for 3 different schematics for the 3 different sites, or 1 schematic, and how would it fit on each of the sites, or we don't know?
We don't know. I think we'll have to discuss with him. I think, we could do the program and find out what the needs are, and then I think each site might have its own constraints, so they have to, kind of, not each, it wouldn't be one building you'd probably plop everywhere. They might have ideas and creativity with that. So that'll be something we'll have to discuss with the architect.
At what point does it make sense? Would we start by just kind of eyeballing, like we've said, sort of to the left of the gate into the DPW land to the fence line? Is that going to be sufficient? Or we've talked about at the school, at the Groton Harvard Road site, to the left of the practice field. But like, at what point do we need to, does this other due diligence need to play out first before you would say, actually, here's a little bit more specific? Or do you let the architect drive that and say, here's what you would need based on what you've told me, see if you can get the parcel to be this big?
I think the important thing that Dan said is it's going to be up to you to get the program. We need the program.
Sure.
You need the room sizes. And you have to, right, and then you're going to have to, eventually I think we'll have to get into the discussion of whether it's a 2-story building or a single-story building.
Right.
That might be driven by the land for sure.
Right,
But to develop, I'm just speculating, but I think even the process that we used before, in the old days, like 3 years ago, was that that program is critical for you guys.
Sure, that's a given to me. The program is critical, but I guess what I'm saying is for us all to evaluate as the program is coming together. Let's say there's no showstopper with any of these 3 sites. Like, wouldn't we need at some point to know more specifically how much, because we're carving out a separate parcel from 3 larger parcels. It's not like it's an existing parcel of 243 feet wide or whatever. So at what point does it, in this process, does that get defined?
So I think it would be good to have, that is, if we can get the architect to say, if you move it somewhat here to the left and include this much acreage, you're going to be able to do more or less. Or if you rotate the building, and that is, I think it would certainly be helpful for me to know at the Groton Harvard or any of the 3 sites, if you can move it this way and take up, then you're going to have easier access or better sight lines, or the viewscape is going to be better, or the access to the rear walking trails is going to be improved if the building is, as opposed to, that is, I think that their input into exactly how much of the parcel and what portion of the parcel we should try to gain control of. For me, I think that would be a good thing to know.
So just to jump in, just from doing similar past experiences, sorry, allergies crushing me. We've always found that the architect wants to know what the canvas is they have to work with before hypothetically developing a building without knowing that. So to your question, I think it is going to be important to get those answers so they know what space they have to work with, because it's unlikely that our architect's going to want to hypothetically create a building that may or may not ever fit there, or may not have to slide into locations that we simply don't have space for.
Yeah, we'll have to give him at least like approximate constraints or what we know from these vettings that we do. From, you know, the location of the brush dump, how close can we go to that, except, you know, stuff like that. And then we can get them whatever we have available for survey. Like, you know, I know there is LiDAR in town, which is, you know, real rough, but when you're doing concept, you can use that.
Okay.
And then he'll probably use, you know, the available soil information that's available on desktop for now to find out, you know, is this a good spot? Are we going to be able to do stormwater here? Where's the parking go? You know, they can start at least concepting it in. And then if we get more serious with a concept, then we would probably do more due diligence, like test pitting and things like that, et cetera. But, yeah.
Okay.
I'm going to go back to the word program. I should have expanded, I guess, on the word program. I think we have to figure out how many square feet you guys are going to need.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
That's
definitely.
critical.
Right.
Yeah.
So how many square feet do we need? Are we building 10, 12, 15? We know what the ideal is, but, and Dennis may disagree with me, and you may disagree. So I think maybe, you know, we can do it on this size, but you guys think you need this size. So as a committee, that will drive how many parking spaces we need, and, you know, the whole, how much outdoor space do we want in terms of patios and approaches, and, you know, how does it land on the site? But I'm leaving it up to you folks to tell us how many square feet we need.
No, I have lots of opinions on that when we get there.
We're going to have to settle on that.
Me too.
We're going to have to settle on that.
Right. And so I think,
Because once he draws it up, we want to kind of stick with a footprint based on how many square feet it is, right?
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you wouldn't want to be redoing the whole thing many times over, yeah.
And I don't know this for sure, but I suspect that a larger building would fit at Groton Harvard and Bishop Road than would fit at Brook Street. That is, there's more kind of flat area to work with, more just the boundaries of the lots we're looking at are wider there than they are at Brook Street.
It's pretty wide at Brook Street. If you push, you know, you can get over near his building, it gets pretty wide. But
So you don't see, all right, well, I mean, for me, and from having visited a number of, bigger is better. That is.
That's what the discussion is. That's what I'm
Yeah,
getting
so
at.
that when talking about should it be 10 or should it be 15, my inclination is to move closer to the 15 number
Right.
than the 10
Mine's closer to
number.
the 10, so we already have, that's what we're going to be working on.
And I think that really, I think 10 versus 15 is kind of arbitrary until you know what you're really going to do.
What do you need the rooms
with
for?
this, what you need the rooms for,
Yeah, exactly.
and what you're willing to put in. So like and these are really small details, but like if a sink and adequate cabinet storage goes in every single room, then every single room could be rotated and used for massage, wellness, whatever, cooking demonstration, arts and crafts classes, that sort of a thing. They can, I mean, storage is one thing, but they can swing multi-purpose as needed, versus some centers we visited had very specific flooring on this room for this specific activity.
Right.
So, you know, I'm a fan of multi-purpose spaces.
Right.
So, I mean, I want it to be big enough to serve our needs, but it needs to be flexible, because what seniors want now and what they want 5 to 7 to 10 years from now will be a little bit different, and 10 years from now will be different, right? So,
And
That's what that's what.
Yeah.
And, you know, in talking with some folks who have recently built them,
Yeah,
I heard in Situate, Andover, and just now in Townsend, that within 5 years of the building opening, they were looking for more space.
Yeah.
For either, and again, either when the space was developed as a senior center, the community started recognizing the quality of the building, or the fact that the, you know, audio-visual stuff was first rate, and so community meetings started wanting to be held there, or they needed more rooms because the programs were being oversubscribed. The fitness room was too small now that so I haven't heard yet oops, it's too big and people don't feel comfortable here and it's just overwhelming. It's not to say that you couldn't make it too big, but if you're going to make a mistake in that regard, I suspect it would be to go too small rather than too big.
Then my inkling to agree with Dennis, if we get a concession of conclusion of the group, would be that we decide that it's going to be 14 or 15,000, and that's just where we start with the architect as well, and then you fit your program into that. If you can get your program into 14,000 or whatever the number is, 14 or 15, and that's part of our sales job.
Right.
We need to work on a building of this size, otherwise it's not going to work in 25 years or something like that.
And just going back to Dan's point, I think that's why it is important to have that be one of the architect's first missions, because they're
He's
really
done
going to help steer that,
Yeah.
from their expertise.
Yeah.
And I mean, and part of that is, and I asked Alan for this, and he's working on it, is, what's the anticipated population growth? And, what's the upper limit to the population in there and all the rest of it, and how do you kind of crunch those numbers? And again, I know that the further out you go, the less reliable the predictions are. But it would be good to, the town will never be 40,000 people, so we don't have to make it that big. But if the town is 12,000 people,
Right.
And we know the senior population is growing.
Yeah,
That's the one that's growing.
nationwide, the trend is saying that the data is showing, the projections at a nationwide level are showing that the number of seniors in any given community are going to continue to grow until 2060. The peak will be in 2060, but it will be an incredibly large number. It's already almost 25% of Ayer's population. So seniors are going to continue to grow until that segment of the population until 2060. And then obviously it's not going to there's not going to be no seniors after 2060. It's just not going to grow anymore. So it would be still high, but not growing. So it's I know the data at a national level, but I think it would be great to have those projections at a local level.
I want to thank Dan for analyzing that contract with me and bringing it forward to Catlin. And I'm pleasantly surprised that if he agreed with all those changes that we talked about.
Yeah. Thank you for the help too.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you guys for doing that.
Yeah.
All right, so wonderful. So I guess you'll let the committee know, or I guess maybe even Robert can provide an update on where he is in that process, because you'll turn it over to him soon, right?
Yeah. I don't think it'll take too long as council moves it to the top of their ladder. And usually if I get Katie Klein, it gets done pretty quick. So
Okay.
I think, I hope by the end of next week we have something.
Okay.
And at the latest. I think it'll be before that.
Okay. All right. Anything else with the architect? Because then. Okay. All right. Gosh, I think.
Katie?
Oh yes, Ellen.
Yeah, can I say something?
Of course.
I want to agree with Dennis about not building it too small, because when I did the references, as he said, the biggest complaint were from people who felt they had finished it and it was already too small. So, I do think we need to have adequate space. The other question is, everybody's talking about program, and I want to confirm if the idea that we need to specify what program we're looking for, if that's going to be a time when we're going to have public input.
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
Okay, because I think it would be advisable to try to do that before the summer, which would be like mid-June. So I'm hoping that if we're going to work on that, we get on it right away.
So Alan, just to let you and the general public, Katie on yesterday or the day before, I think, Monday, was it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Tuesday.
So she did hold a meeting, which was with the folks down at the senior center now, just to kind of bring them up to speed on where we are in this process, in terms of where we are in the site selection process, and that we're moving forward in an effort to kind of keep the community engaged. And So we have started that process. The specificity about what kinds of programs and how much space, we haven't quite gotten there yet, but I would agree that having some level of public input into that would be great.
Yeah, and I just want to stress, obviously, it has to go beyond, obviously, COA patrons. It
Right.
needs to be
Yeah,
the
yeah.
general
Right.
public.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. And I think that's something that the architect will have a lot of assistance with, is how to structure those. What are the main questions you want to be asking? Who do you want to be asking them of, and how many times, in order to feel like you've gotten a representative sample of residents?
Yeah, and I was actually going to ask, is that part of the contract that they're going to be beholden to a couple of public hearings that they'll be running surveys? Because I know in some projects that is put into the contract of architects so that there's a third party doing it. So just curious if that is part of this contract.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty strong indication that he would be leading the charge
Yeah.
on all that stuff, yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
All right, yep, good.
He even said it that night of the interview and whatnot, pretty much talked about that.
Right.
I think that takes us to public input then. Any public input, both
think
online or, is that,
The mouse.
oh, that's the mouse, yeah.
No.
In person or online, any public input?
I just want to say that I think it should be on St. Mary's Cemetery. That's my opinion. That's where the senior center should be.
On the cemetery.
On the cemetery, or you mean on Bishop,
Right.
Bishop Road?
On
Bishop Road.
Bishop
Okay.
Pearson Road.
Yes.
That I think it should be.
All right.
That's,
You put it on a cemetery, the environmental review.
I know, but they have.
Sending the right message.
Goes completely nuts.
They have more land that they're filling in too for,
Oh, okay.
to make it.
And can I ask you why you think that that's the preferable site? What are your,
Well, I think at the DPW, there's not enough area for what would be needed for a senior center.
You're talking Brook Street? Brook Street?
Brook Street, yep. That, for outside and then even inside. And I prefer a one-story and not a two-story. The two-story would be if you wanted to, rent out the second half, or special meetings or something, upstairs. But I think if you're gonna do that, then you have to talk about an elevator to go up to the second floor with seniors. So it's more of an expense to do a second floor. And then the one in Groton Harvard Road, I don't think is big enough for this ledge there, and how much is
No,
it gonna cost?
you might not be familiar with all the details on some of the land as well, so it's a little tricky to visualize it from the street unless you've walked it. So it's, yeah.
we'll see. Yeah, more to come, but I do appreciate, it's good to have that. Bring your friends next time.
Plenty of good seats available.
And one of the things I think we'll see as we get further on in this process is, people will have opinions, and then as we add to the program, the concept, as our work as a committee is progressing, then opinions can become more and more informed and more concrete, as well as our plans become,
Right.
more developed. So, yeah.
I mean, people need to see more. I mean, none of us can guess. That's,
Right.
It's going to be helpful as we get through the process with the architect to get something up on a slide or whatever that'll help.
Definitely.
It's a good move.
All right. And Pauline.
Yes, good evening, Madam Chair, Katie. Just again, you all are doing a great job. If there's a committee in this town that is as detailed and as determined as you, I spend a lot of time watching all of them. And second to the planning board, maybe this is the next best one. I am disheartened by how many people have fallen off the watching and listening. So I wanted to just let you all know that I'm going to try and rattle the cages a little bit, and I didn't want you to think that it was a challenge or a question to anything you've done. I really am supporting this, and I think more people need to participate, and I'm sorry that isn't happening.
We always welcome more participation.
that, 100%.
We always get a better product that way.
Can I say something?
Sure.
First, I'm going to do the hand thing. Thank you, Pauline. I think that having the public meetings to talk about program will be a ideal time for people to be involved, because that's when they can, you know, give their opinions and their ideas, and they will have the most impact as we're ready to design, you know, what's going to go in the building. So I think that would be good. As soon as we get a date for our public meeting.
Madam Chair, if I may, I totally agree, Ellen, but the process of deciding on a site and all of this other will simply lead to people saying, well, this, that, or the other thing. And I wish there was quite a interest in the whole process 6, 8, 10 months ago, and now all of a sudden it's all fallen off. Maybe it's just the winter blues, I don't know. But I just wanted you to all be aware. I'm going to try and generate some support, maybe I should say interest, because people really need to participate. And if they don't participate, they don't get to speak. And I'm a fan of that. But I just wanted to let you all know I'm appreciative of all you're doing. You're the most in-depth of everything I've ever watched. Second to the planning board, Mr. Diskin. But thank you all so much for your service. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Pauline.
Thank you.
All right. I think that brings us to our next meeting. I think we said that it was going to take, you know, end of next week. You said probably to be able to say, Dan, that the contract is ready to go.
Yeah, I would say that, and plus what, April 30th, we're going to meet with Devon's.
Right.
And then I'm thinking, you know, we schedule this meeting we're going to do right now, and we'll also ask to have Catlin come when he's available. We'll have to kind of check it, make sure it works with his schedule. So it might be something, you know, we can schedule now, tentative. And
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. So do we think then either the week of, like maybe later in the week of the 6th, or do you think we need to go into the week of the 13th?
Third?
I'm going to be on vacation the 14th to the 21st, but I'm just telling you that you can still go ahead. But
Lucky you.
You just came back. Come on, buddy.
You said May 14th to when?
21st.
21st.
For her, yeah.
It was the 13th? Monday the
So I'm
13th?
kind of pigeonholed to Wednesdays right now. I'm coaching 2 baseball teams and a soccer team, so I have
Okay.
very little time. So if Wednesdays works for everybody, that'd be preferred to me, but if not, obviously, you know,
Right.
that's okay too.
I'm in the same boat as you, actually.
No, it has to
Still
be,
soccer, Wednesday works.
it has to be a
So
Wednesday?
Wednesday works
other-
for you as well? Okay.
Wednesday works. I like Wednesday at 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
Wednesday
I do
Wednesday at
too.
6.
I would do something during the day and do this in the evening.
Wednesday the 15th?
Why don't we say Wednesday the 15th, and then maybe Dan, can you reach out to Catlin and see when they're available?
Yeah.
Okay.
So Lane, Wednesday the 15th at 6. I'll reach out to him tomorrow. And,
Because Wednesday the
sure it'll
8th,
work.
it seems unlikely that everything would be in place by then, or less likely. So, I mean, that was my thinking about the 15th, is that the 8th would just be too quick for the April 30th.
Yeah, probably give us a little more time. Yeah, I'd say 15th. Yeah.
15th, okay. All right, wonderful. So we'll tentatively say the 15th at 6 p.m. And I did, as you'll notice, tonight's meeting was set up with a different Zoom meeting ID than the ones previously. So the Senior Center's hybrid programming grant, their Zoom account is hosting this meeting, which I think is going to be really advantageous for us going forward, so that we don't need to work around the other board's use of the
Very good.
primary town Zoom account. So that will give us flexibility. Obviously, this room is needs to be scheduled, or there's the upstairs room. I think it'll be good going forward. So
Nice.
Yeah.
okay,
I think that's a big deal, what you just talked about. Thank you.
no problem. All right. Anything else before we adjourn?
Just want to go back. Everyone is, in this group is happy with the thoughts we had on Bishop Road. Does anyone have any other thoughts that we could use to make our case as strong as possible? Either related to this or just in general for the town.
My initial thoughts on that are that it works to to my way of thinking, there are significant advantages to mass development moving the gate to mass development. That is, the cost to them is negligible, I think. The opportunity cost to us of losing this is significant. So there are a lot of good things that could happen for mass development and for the entire Devon's project if this development could go, and again, I'm not prejudging that it must go there, but so to the extent that we can rally support in the community for this is something good that we would like to see happen, or like to see made possible, because if we can't do this for mass development reasons, then at what point will we, the town, be able to do anything there?
Right.
That if they nix this because the gate has to remain, then the gate has to remain, and at what point in the future, is it 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 30 years from now, that the town would gain access to that?
I think that would largely be dependent, and not to speculate about it, but that would largely be dependent upon what their reason would be.
That's right.
Right? Is their reason due to a property barrier? Is it due to security? Is it due to species, protection of species? Is it due to flood? Like, I think without taking the simple question to them first and then seeing if they are receptive and if there are hesitancies, on what basis, then I think this is I don't think this is going to be a walk in, hey, do you want to do it? Can we put another gate up? Yes, you can. And then one conversation. I assume it's going to be more than one conversation that evolves based on what they're.
Because it's a government situation, I don't think that's a bad description of what but I do want to mention something. I should have asked this before and put Dan on the spot. What I'd never asked before, unless we only alluded to it, is there any apprehension from the DPW that any of the land we're looking at is critical to them? It cannot be replaced anywhere else. Okay. I'm looking at the fact that I think there's 79 odd acres over there, which should give you plenty of flexibility, but I never asked that question, I don't think.
Yeah, and that's obviously something I thought of when we were doing that. So I think I would have been pretty straightforward if it was something that we, hey, don't do that. We need that for wastewater or something. But I think these two sites we're looking at, we know the constraints there. I brought up the one at Brook Street with our critical sewer and water and gas main, utilities, all that. So that's the big concern there. But the brush dump area, that's really, I think that's a good spot.
So it may have been more of a convenience for the public to get to that spot than an absolute needed location for DPW.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a suggestion. Is it okay to say? I think we should be prepared for questions about the ACEC and the in terms of what is likely to be disturbed and things like that, because I know they have people working there who are very interested in those areas. And if they ask us and we don't know anything about it, it might just postpone, any kind of decision.
Yeah, thanks. And actually going back to you, Ken, too, the DPW, during Mark Wetzel's time, we did have a needs study done for the DPW.
Oh, okay.
And so we've been sort of phasing it in. We've done the highway garage. We've done a garage at the water plant. Initially, the recommendation was to put a Taj Mahal on the DPW property, kind of like Westford has. I don't know if you've ever been to their DPW. But Mark used to call it the Wetzel plan, where we're kind of putting pieces together at various parts of town. So from that needs study, there's nothing in there that these sites disrupt either.
Thank you.
So, yeah.
Okay, good. All right. Do I have a motion to adjourn then, or anything? I'm sorry, anything else?
I will make the motion to adjourn.
Second?
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Bye.
Great. We are adjourned to 7:02 PM.